𝙀𝙓𝙅𝙏.
Let's talk for a moment about a subject about which Jehovah's Witnesses know absolutely nothing. That topic is the Bible Translation Committee of the New World Translation. There's a whole article about it on the organization's website. Actually, the reason for this is that they don't have to question their views on this issue. Another major reason is that they don't really even care to know who was translating the New World Translation. The organization defines the Jehovah's Witnesses' view on this issue as a group of anointed Christians appointed by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses to produce a translation of the Bible in modern English. In order to give due honor to the author of the Bible, the committee members have chosen to remain anonymous. Let's analyze this case a little bit. The translation of the New World Translation began on Tuesday, December 2nd, 1947. Firstly, its New Testament was published on Wednesday, August 2nd, 1950, and the entire New World Translation was published in one volume in 1961. Since then, several revised, meaning fixed versions of the translation have been produced. Different versions were made in 1970, 1984, and 2013, and whenever the English version was completed, it was translated into other languages. In addition, a special New World Translation Study Edition was published during 2015 to 2024, which can be found on the organization's website. So the organization will certainly use the best brothers it has for this translation work. They must be anointed, dedicated men of God. They must also be imperfect and be able to make mistakes. And worst of all, they either have to serve in a governing body or be appointed by it, which is not. How can I put this nicely? I quote directly from the organization's own publications, so as not to say anything wrong.
Well, knowing this, then we are not embarrassed about adjustments that are made, nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. We understand this is how Jehovah operates. He reveals matters gradually when it is needed. And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible, and so it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction.
They also have this opinion about various translations of the Bible, again, direct quote. Bible translations themselves are not inspired by God. Translations, by their very nature, may reflect variations of the understanding of the original tongues in which the Bible was recorded. So, the anointed translators of the New World Translation are imperfect, they make mistakes, and they are not inspired, as they themselves admit. Furthermore, they admit that no Bible translations are directly inspired either. So is there any good reason why their authority and the translation decisions they make should not be criticized or questioned? Personally, I can't think of a single sensible reason, especially when they do not dare to come out on their own face and admit that they are responsible for the translation solutions of this translation, which they already implicitly admit, by the way, are not inspired. Let's end this video with an example of a persistent error found in many other translations of the Bible and also found in the New World Translation. When I pointed this out to an elder who was himself involved in translating the New World Translation into Finnish, he began to accuse me of misrepresenting the Bible. So let's see if I really had any basis for that. This was Jeremiah 29 verse 10, which in many translations says, "in Babylon." When this verse is studied in the original language, Hebrew, in which it was written, it does not read that way. One of the most important aspects of translation is to be faithful to the original text and not let preconceptions guide the interpretation. This is a good example because the passage is so unambiguous that it should not be possible to misinterpret it. But nevertheless, it is often done. Please try to keep up with me as I open this case. In Hebrew Jeremiah 29 verse 10, the word Babylon has a one-letter preposition attached to it, which defines exactly how that word should be translated. In the Hebrew, a one-letter word never occurs on its own. Therefore, it is attached to the beginning of the word following the preposition. And since Hebrew is read the other way round from right to left, the preposition in question is the first to be read from the right. I have marked the prepositions in red in this figure. In any case, the counterparts of this preposition in question are the English prepositions for or to. If, on the other hand, the word Babylon is preceded by the preposition bet, as in Jeremiah 29 verse 22, it corresponds to the English prepositions at or in. This is quite simple. You cannot confuse prepositions or their meanings in any language. Now, when you examine the most reliable Hebrew source texts, such as the Aleppo, Leningrad, and Cairo codices, which are used by all Bible translations, in Jeremiah 29 verse 10, the preposition before the word Babylon is always lamed. It is not my fault that this is just the way it is. I have not picked this up out of thin air, but found it by hard research. I have made videos on the subject only in Finnish though. Sorry about that. And this is certainly not rocket science. Anyone can see for themselves that this is the case. The rules of grammar in Hebrew are exactly the same as in any other language. No translator should have the authority to change the original text of the Bible and its meaning. Even in these matters, it is so easy to mislead people. And by the way, the copyists of the Bible, the Masoretes and the Sopharites, who made copies of the old texts by hand, of course they also made mistakes. But here in Jeremiah 29 verse 10, the word Babylon and the preposition before it cannot be interpreted as a mistake by the copyists either, because all the independent copyists of the manuscripts wrote it exactly the same way. Finally, let us return to the matter of the Bible Translation Committee for the New World Translation. What do we know about it? What is known is that they are so-called anointed men, most likely belonging to the governing body at Jehovah's Witnesses headquarters. But they wish to remain anonymous for some reason. Why is that? When the revised edition of the New World Translation was published in 2013, who were the brethren on the governing body at that time? You don't need a rocket engineer's training to figure this out either. In 2013, the governing body consisted of brothers 𝙀𝙓𝙅𝙏, Samuel Hurd, Stephen Lett, Guy Pearce, David Splain, Jeffrey Jackson, Anthony Morris, and Mark Sanderson, 8 brothers. Some of them were 100% certain to be part of that Bible Translation Committee, which was the 4th of its kind. So there's their names and faces. When the new version of the New World Translation was published in 1984, the governing body included brothers Grant Suter, Frederick Franz, Lyman Swingle, Milton Henschel, William Jackson, Leo Greenlees, George Gongas, Lloyd Barry, John Booth, Theodore Urash, Carl Klein, Albert Schroeder, Daniel Sidlick, Carrie Barber, John Barr, and Martin Potzinger, 16 brothers in all. Some of them were also 100% certain to be part of that translation committee, which was the 3rd of its kind. So here are their names and faces. In the 1970s, a new version of the New World Translation appeared, although it was not nearly as much work to produce as the 1st, 3rd, and 4th translations. In the 1950s, when the New World Translation was first produced, the workload was probably the greatest because computers did not yet exist, which would have made it easier to process the text in electronic form. In the book Crisis of Conscience by former member of the governing body, Raymond Franz, in Chapter 3, The Governing Body, page 56, in the footnote, it is stated that at that time the translation committee consisted of only 4 brothers. They were Nathan Knorr, Frederick Franz, Albert Schroeder, and George Gongas. Raymond Franz does not mention Milton Henschel as a member of this translation team, although he was Knorr's secretary. Henschel was not elected to the actual governing body until 1970, when it was formed for the first time. All these brothers, except brother Knorr, were also involved in the 1970s and 80s. So was this kind of secrecy of any use? But since the truth will always come out eventually, wouldn't it have been wiser to have a transparent religion from the start? The situation at the moment is that for Jehovah's Witnesses, their Bible Translation Committee remains secret and unknown, but other people outside the organization, as well as those who have awakened within the organization, know exactly who belong to it. Witnesses have neither the right nor the courage to go digging around outside the organization. This organization and its uninspired governing body is no better than any other religious organization. It should be understood that if you claim to be the only channel of truth, you should also prove it in some way. It is not enough to defend itself as imperfect and uninspired. The number of people baptized or the number of people who go to the memorial of Jesus' death to reject the emblems is not proof enough. The proof is not the worldwide preaching work, where people are taught all kinds of nonsense. The number of publications is no proof, because they all contain some erroneous view. The number of printed Bibles is no proof, because they too are just uninspired translations. If none of this is proof of what the organization does, why do people believe in it so insistently? If only love were the only sign. But it's not. Love is not rejecting even a close relative if they disagree with you on something. Nor is it love to greet only the brothers inside the organization. Jesus said that true Christians should even pray for their enemies. Jehovah's Witnesses do not fulfill any of the claims that their organization is the only channel of truth on earth used by God. Perhaps this too will have to be admitted when a new understanding is revealed. Take care of yourselves.